everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Dina Kastner. I'm the Public Policy and Advocacy Manager at the National Association of Social Workers, and I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about social work is a profession, a response to the Department of Education's RISE Committee proposed rule. I wanted to first give a shout out to one of my colleagues, Nadir Carlson of our Wisconsin chapter, who suggested doing an event like this. And so we're really happy that this has come together. So for tonight, I'm going to have a few different things that I want to go over, and then there'll be time at the end for questions. I'm going to start with about how we got here, what the issues are with the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, what NASW is doing, and then some information about different congressional action that's happening. So in terms of how we got here, the one big beautiful bill, which was signed into law by President Trump on July 4th, 2025, had components in it that had to do with student loan limits and also the PSLF program. So we're going to be focusing on both of those. The major issue is the student loan limits. And just so you all know, HR 1, which is the one big beautiful bill, or the reconciliation bill, it was passed on a party line vote, except in the House, except for Reps Brian Fitzpatrick and Rep Thomas Massey voted against it. All Democrats voted against it, and all other Republicans voted for it. In the Senate, it passed 51-50 with the tiebreak from the vice president. 3 Republicans voted against it. That's Susan Collins from Maine, Rand Paul from Kentucky, and Tom Tillis from North Carolina. In the One Big Beautiful Bill, they had information about wanting to have lower loan limits for graduate programs compared to professional programs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those levels in a moment. After the bill was passed and signed into law, the Department of Education was charged with doing rulemaking. And so they have what's called a negotiated rulemaking process. And that's where they brought together different stakeholders to talk about how to implement the statute for the Department of Education. Through that negotiated rulemaking process, they needed to come to consensus on what they were going to be doing. And that negotiated rulemaking happened late last year. And then on January 30th of this year, the Department of Education put out their notice of proposed rulemaking on this issue. And so that's where we're at now. And they gave a 30-day comment period, which is a very short time frame. A lot of times these comment periods are more like 60 days, but in this case, they did the 30-day time period. So there's a few different issues in the NPRM. One has to do with student loan limits. And a lot of you probably know some of these details already, but I just want to level set so everyone has the same information. In terms of graduate programs, the annual loan limits are $20,500, and then the aggregate loan limit is $100,000. And this is information that came from the reconciliation bill, or HR 1. And then for professional programs, it was $50,000 annual and $200,000 aggregate. So for a lot of people, this is not enough in terms of getting their advanced degrees. And so a number of people have come together to try and work on this issue and get the Department of Education to change how they're defining a professional degree. In the statute, the professional degree came from 34 CFR 668.2. And in that code, it stated that a degree that signifies that a professional degree is one that signifies both completion of the academic requirements for beginning practice in a given profession and a level of professional skill beyond that normally required for a bachelor's degree. And professional licensure is also generally required. And then they said that examples of a professional degree include, but are not limited to, and they had a number of degrees that they included. But again, the important phrase here is that they were not limited to these degrees. So the degrees that were considered, that were stated as professional are pharmacy, dentistry, veterinary medicine, chiropractic, law, medicine, optometry, osteopathic medicine, podiatry, and theology. And then they, in the negotiated rulemaking, they did add clinical psychology. So that's, the department decided to take a narrow view, a limited view in terms of who would be considered part of a professional program. And so, as you can hear from this, social work was not in that list, even though we meet the requirements that they talked about in terms of having professional skills beyond what's normally required for a bachelor's degree and professional licensure. So that is a big part of what we're doing, is trying to make comments to the Department of Education about why social work should be considered a professional degree. Before the rule came out, we had a good sense of what was going to come out, because they really needed to use what happened from the negotiated rulemaking process, that is what was going to be put forward in the rule. So we drafted a petition, which is still open, and we're going to be putting a link in the chat box, as well as up on the screen, about this petition. And the petition basically just says that social work should be considered a professional degree. And so we sent the petition to the Department of Education with over 21,000 signatures. And that was before they put out their rule. And so we think some of that advocacy that we did ahead of time is what prompted them to call out social work in particular, in terms of trying to defend against our advocacy on having social work be considered a professional degree. And then another issue that came in through the HR 1 was there's a new tiered standard repayment plan for student loans, and it offers fixed terms of 10, 15, 20, or 25 years based on a person's loan balance, that will have lower payments but still pay off the student loans in that time period. And then there's a new income-driven repayment plan, also known as the Repayment Assistance Plan, which is like the former income-driven repayment plans, which base the amount you pay based on your salary or your income. So the issue is that the department, and through the statute, they said that the tiered standard repayment plan would not be eligible for the public service loan forgiveness program. So this is a major issue for people who are going to be getting loans, and we want to see, and they won't know if they may not know if they go into the tiered standard repayment plan that they wouldn't be eligible for the public service loan forgiveness program. So this is a major issue for social workers. So we're also, in our comments, we're working on that issue as well. A little bit about what NASW has been doing and is continuing to do. We've been working in coalition. There's a group called the Alliance for Healthcare Access and Workforce Development, which has pulled together a lot of health professions and other professionals as well to talk about this proposed rule and try to come up with comments and actions to change what the Department of Education is doing. We also have worked with the Medicare Mental Health Workforce Coalition and the Mental Health Liaison Group on joint comments that we'll be submitting. We've done a congressional briefing with other mental health providers where we had 2 members of Congress come to talk about the issue. And we had a packed room on the Capitol on the Hill. And we had staff from offices in both the Senate and the House. And we've been able to follow up with those offices to talk about the need for changes to the professional degree issue. That was the main focus of that briefing. We've also been partnering with other social work organizations such as the Council on Social Work Education, Society for Social Work and Research, the School Social Work Association of America, the Clinical Social Work Association, ASWB, and the Social Work Leadership Roundtable. So we've been working in as many areas as we can to really try to influence the Department of Education to make changes to what they put out as their proposed rule. So, I'm not sure if I said at the beginning, the comment period ends on March 2nd, 2026. That was a 30-day period. And so we are doing everything we can to get our comments together. And we've also been working to mobilize members, and there'll be some links in the chat box around our petition, which at this point has 28,853 signatures. We're hopeful that we'll get up to 30,000 signatures on that petition. We submitted the petition in mid-December to the Department of Education, and we'll be submitting it again with the new signatures with our comments. And in the chat box, the link that you see up on the screen will be clickable. We've also just put out an action alert about how to respond to comments, or to make comments, to the Department of Education. And so we put that out yesterday, and we've had 767 comments since yesterday, and 287 of those comments were personalized. So if you do use that link to respond to our action alert, I do ask that you personalize your comments so that they're counted as unique comments. In the proposed rule, the Department of Education did say that they will count comments that are substantively similar. They won't look at them all individually, but they will count them, as overall numbers. So even if you can't personalize it too much, just getting it in is going to make an impact with the Department of Education. And then, so we've got this process going right now with the Department of Education. So this regulatory process is underway, and we're waiting to see how it goes and whether or not the department will make any changes based on the comments that we and other coalition partners submit. In the meantime, in Congress, there's been some legislation that's been introduced to try and rectify the student loan limit issue. Representative Tim Kennedy from New York has a bill called the Loan Equity for Advanced Professionals Act, which is HR 6574. And that bill would amend the Higher Education Act to ensure that graduate and professional students have the same annual and aggregate limits for federal direct unsubsidized loans. So that covers any profession, any graduate program, whether it's been deemed professional by the Department of Education at this point. And that has 46 co-sponsors, and they're all Democrats. Another bill that we've endorsed is the Professional Student Degree Act, which is HR 6718. And that's led by Representative Michael Lawler, also from New York. He's a Republican, and he has 7 co-sponsors, and they're all Republicans. It adds social work to the list of professional degrees. and it says that a professional degree means a degree that signifies both completion of the academic requirements for beginning practice in a given profession, or for which professional licensure also is commonly required, and a level of professional skill beyond that normally required for a bachelor's degree as determined by the secretary. So social work is listed within the degrees that they want to be considered as professional. And then another bill that we most recently endorsed is from Congressman Richie Torres, also from New York. We have the 3 bills all from people from New York. Congressman Torres is a Democrat. His bill is called the Professional Degree Access Restoration Act. That's HR 6677. That would amend the Higher Education Act to restore the federal loan structure that existed prior to these changes by reversing recent restrictions on federal borrowing for graduate and professional students. So all of these pieces of legislation would expand the definition of professional degrees to be inclusive of social work. So we have been supportive of that, and will be, depending on what happens with the proposed rule and then the final rule that will come out. We don't know exactly how long it will take. Then this legislative activity will become more engaged, and we'll be pushing more for that. One other option is litigation. And so there are groups that work with groups like us who help with providing litigation support around any kind of concerns that we might have. So part of what we're doing when we're developing our comments is making sure that we're putting in legal arguments so that if it goes to court, then we'll be able to bring those issues up. If those issues aren't addressed in anyone's comments ahead of time, they're not considered germane to the litigation. So that's kind of an overview. And I see that we do have a couple of questions, and I encourage others to put questions. I'm not sure how that works exactly. I think you put it in the chat box. And so I guess if we could have our first question. And then, this is a question. Any possibility of legal action if DOE does not change the rule? Yes. And I think that question came in before the last part of my presentation. So there is definitely a possibility of litigation. So that is definitely a real possibility to make sure that the department follows the law and treats social workers as a profession as well as other professional groups. And then the next question is, there we go. For those of us participating in lead day activities at our state houses, what lines of questioning requests should we direct to representatives looking for specific talking points? So in terms of at your state house, there isn't going to be legislation that would specifically impact this because this is really federal legislation or federal activity. But in terms of specific talking points, one issue is that social work is a profession. We need to even though you can get a bachelor's in social work, in order to work in most social work jobs, you do need a master's degree. And that is part of the definition of a professional degree, is to have a graduate degree. And then another talking point would be to talk about the fact that in HR 1, the legislation says that it refers to the code, which says that they have examples of professional degrees, but that it's not limited to those degrees. So I think that's another key point to bring up, is that that was only supposed to be illustrative, not an exhaustive list. So I think those are some points to bring up. And then in terms of the tiered standard repayment plan, I think the talking point is that social workers and other public service professionals have basically there's been an agreement from the federal government that they can qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and that since they're serving their communities, it's a benefit to the community to get forgiveness, and it allows individuals who may otherwise get higher paying jobs, help them to be able to provide services in their communities. And so by disregarding, not allowing public service loan forgiveness to be qualified through that tiered standard repayment plan takes away from the intent of Congress when they passed the public service loan forgiveness program. So those are some talking points that I would try and use. Were there any other questions? Oh, is Senator Barrasso or Congressman Fitzpatrick helping us out on this rule? They haven't been helping us specifically on this rule, but we are in communication with their offices. Congressman Fitzpatrick's education LA came to our congressional briefing, and I've been doing some follow-up with her. So I guess in a way they are. Congressman Fitzpatrick is on Representative Lawler's bill, and so he's definitely interested. We haven't talked to Senator Barrasso's staff about this directly, but we did invite his staff to come to the congressional briefing. Just looking, okay. Why isn't all people in Maryland CPS not complying with occupational laws and allowing unlicensed workers to do social work? So that is not something I have any expertise in. I would recommend reaching out to your Maryland chapter to get some information about that. That's more of a state level issue. Is there a good website or organization where people can learn more and get the latest information? We are working with that coalition that I mentioned, the Alliance for Healthcare Access and Workforce Development. They're going to be developing a website. It's kind of just a group that's come together kind of organically. So we didn't have staff for the coalition, so we haven't gotten a website up yet, but that is something we're working on. And once that is live, we can share that over social media and other channels within NASW. Do we have any other questions? Well, it doesn't look, oh wait, there's one more. Oh, and they're just putting up the website for the Maryland chapter. Great. Well, thank you so much for taking time this evening or afternoon for you to listen to me about this. This is something that's been taking up a lot of the air in the room, and we're really doing everything we can to advocate for the profession on this critical issue. Please do submit your comments to the Department of Education, and you can do that directly through regulations.gov, or you can go to our action alert and edit our comments, and then do consider joining our advocacy listserv. That's where you can also find the action alert. And then the petition. Please sign our petition. We'd love to get over 30,000 signatures on that petition. But I think that's all for tonight. So thank you so much and have a great evening or afternoon.